3 FM and 104.3.
On the move again, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That miles-long column of Russian military vehicles that's been mostly parked north of the Ukrainian capital.
We're now seeing satellite images of that 40-mile-long convoy that was sitting outside the city for the last 2 weeks, fanning out into offensive positions, heading into the woods. Artillery pieces now being trained on this city itself. So real concerns that this inevitable assault on the capital is going to start soon.
Fox's Benjamin Hall in Kiev, ever defiant Ukraine's President Zelensky issuing a warning to the invading Russian soldiers.
You can still save yourselves if you just go home. Do not believe your commanders who say that you will still have a chance in Ukraine. Nothing but prison and death awaits you here. You are taking our lives and will pay with yours.
The Ukrainian military now estimates Russia has lost 12,000 soldiers, more than 300 tanks, and scores of planes and helicopters. President Biden telling the winter meeting of the Democratic National Committee that Russian President Vladimir Putin miscalculated.
Putin was counting on a divided NATO, a divided West, and quite frankly, a divided America. But he got none of that.
The president also said a united Democratic Party is essential heading into November's midterm elections. With 68 yes votes, the Senate has passed the catch-all spending bill that will keep the government operating through the end of the fiscal year. It also includes $13.6 billion in aid to Ukraine. Senate Republican leader McConnell saying that help should have been sent a lot sooner.
This administration has been a step behind every step of the way, if you will, never quite doing things soon enough.
President Biden says he will sign that bill when it hits his desk. Wall Street turning lower on Thursday, the Dow losing 112 points. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
For a third straight month, inflation ran at a 40-year high last month.
The Consumer Price Index shows inflation jumped 7.9% year over year. Housing saw a 4.7% jump in costs. Groceries went up over 8.5%. But it was gas that saw the largest rise, 38%. White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki says that number may go higher still.
There is also no question that inflation may be higher for the next few months than it would have been without President Putin and Russia's further invasion into Ukraine.
Even after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said he was still inclined to back a quarter-point rate hike next week when the Fed meets as they grapple with inflation. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Actor Jussie Smollett is behind bars, led away in handcuffs from his sentencing hearing Thursday, a little lighter in the wallet as well.
You will pay restitution to the city of Chicago in the amount of $120,106. You are fined $25,000, which is the maximum fine, and you will spend the first 150 days of your sentence in the Cook County Jail, and that will start today.
Judge James Lynn Smollett shouted that he was innocent as he was being led away. He'd been convicted on 5 felony counts for telling police he'd been the victim of a hate crime, which turned out to be a hoax. The baseball lockout is over.
Owners unanimously ratified a new 5-year collective bargaining agreement, ending the second longest work stoppage in Major League Baseball history. The new CBA making changes to gameplay with the universal designated hitter and 12-team postseason, while readjusting the competitive balance tax to 4 tiers and raising player minimum salary.
It's Fox's Matt Napolitano opening day for the regular season. Now set for April 7th, there will be extra doubleheaders inserted into the schedule to make up for the days lost. A judge in Milwaukee set to consider a request to move the trial of the man accused of driving his SUV into a Christmas parade to a different venue. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream the point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream the point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, even on a Friday. This is pain day for Jose and I. It's the last day of the week for Tall Tales. We go into hibernation for 70 hours, starting at 1800 tonight. But we somehow stumble through it. But we're going to enjoy every single last second of today's broadcast because Tall Tales, tailgaters, it's our source of joy, right, Jose? right, Jose?
You are correct, sir.
All right. Now, before I go into Demi Akotny, I've got someone who, I've got another poet here who's a tall tailor. It's Ismail Velez, and this is what Ismail says. All right, stop, collaborate, and listen. Brandon is back with a brand new mission, holding the nation so tightly, running it into the ground, both day and nightly. Will he ever stop? I don't know, but questions that the laptop and he'll blow. To the extreme he walks off, he's a vandal. Because if he answers the question, he'll create a scandal. If there's a problem, yay, Joe, he caused it. But don't ask for his speech. Camilla smoked it. They're sharing Brandon, baby. They call him Brandon, baby. He lost his marbles, maybe. So let's go, Brandon. That's a good way to wrap up a show, isn't it, Jose?
It's funny that you said rap.
Yeah.
This is, I think Ishmael was trying to become, what's that guy's name again? Vanilla Ice.
Do a little lip syncing, huh?
That's very good.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not going to sing it.
Okay, good. So I've got a vocal piece later on that I might ask you to.
Oh boy.
You don't have to do it by yourself. We can harmonize.
Okay. It sounds great.
When I hear the word harmonize, I think of people going down to Harmon Field and doing some kind of plumbing or auto repair or something like. Oh, we can harmonize on that one. All right. So here's Demi Akotny, Daily News. And here's what the Daily News says. The Solid Waste Authority's forward thinking sets a good example. The island's solid solid waste disposal issues have plagued ratepayers, leaders, and the community at large for decades. The untold environmental damage, along with heavily regulatory fines and the more expensive fixed and solutions, have undercut the government of Guam's ability to meet other equally important mandates meant to serve the people. Yeah, because we screwed around and waited so long. We spent our money on garbage instead of schools and hospitals and police cars. If the first of many violations and subsequent fines were leveled by the Environmental Protection Agency for Clean Water Act violations in the 1980s because of the ORDOT dump leachate charge. But the violations did not end, and the effort to implement long-term solutions dragged on, eventually leading to the costly closure of the dump, the expensive federal receivership, and the construction of the Ladzon landfill in Inalahan. While this decades-long lesson resulted in a new landfill that meets regulations, it's too soon to forget that planning for the future of the landfill and our community's solid waste disposal needs cannot end. Guam Solid Waste Authority General Manager Erwin Slike, S-L-I-K-E. Slike, his first name is Erwin, Jose. Yeah, Slike, I'm just going to go on with the rest of this editorial here. Yeah, General Manager Erwin Slike told members of the Rotary Club on Wednesday that there's a cheaper way to expand the Ladzon landfill. By building smaller cells sequentially, the cost of creating a 9-year cell would be about $9 million instead of $30 million, Slike said, noting that the Guam Solid Waste Authority is exploring other options to turn trash into gas. Landfills can be profitable, he said. This is the kind of strategic forward thinking Guam needs. The Ladzon landfill is expected to be open until at least 2061, and it's refreshing to know that the Solid Waste Authority is thinking ahead, not just about environmental compliance, but in exploring ways the landfill can generate revenue. The Solid Waste Authority leadership is thinking ahead, and they're setting an example, not just for government agencies, but for businesses, organizations, and even families. Like many of us, Guam resources are finite and limited. Proper planning and financial restraint will be the key to our success in decades ahead, and we all should take note of how the Guam Solid Waste Authority is trying to keep our trash and our future in check. Yeah, well, I kind of share their views. It looks like we got somebody over there who is thinking instead of just reacting. And picking up on this subject now, according to Mr. Slike, he said that the decaying trash creates methane gas, which is flammable. And he says there's a way to harvest the methane gas from the trash and sell it. You know, so what I imagine is that retailers here, instead of selling propane and or butane, would be selling methane, which of course wouldn't be free because there's a cost in rendering it and bottling it, etc. And then, of course, we've been talking about waste to energy ever since the name Wagdi Gurgis became a household word some 30 years ago, and primarily because of identification with Mr. Gurgis, waste to energy never got off the ground. But it makes a certain amount of sense in the abstract. If you could burn the garbage in an environmentally safe way, obviously you reduce the volume of the garbage by probably 90%. So the theory was you burn the garbage, you use the heat energy that you create from burning the garbage to make steam, to run a dynamo, a generator, with which you you generate electricity, which you sell to the public, theoretically turning our waste disposal into a profit center. Now, you got to have some sharp accountants and engineers to sit down and tell you what the scale has to be. This Slike said, well, maybe we don't generate enough trash so that waste energy is economical. Maybe not now, but maybe 10 years from now, the technology will change or the amount of waste will increase. But it just seems so wasteful to haul that garbage all the way down to Inalahan. And he says, how much did he say it costs to dig a hole? It's very expensive.
30, oh, yeah.
It was in the news article. Yeah, it's like $15 million to dig a hole for one of those cells. Digging holes in the ground ain't cheap.
And my mom said I wouldn't make it as a ditch digger.
You were just ahead of your time, Jose.
I know.
Yeah, forget about... Well, the Silicon Valleys, that wouldn't work for you because somebody already dug the hole there. That's why it's a valley.
Somebody said there's meth for sale.
Yeah, we've got some experience in dealing with meth, haven't we?
You know, there's my sister and brother-in-law live in Wisconsin, in Germantown, right outside the outskirts of that county or the town.
Germantown? I don't want to talk about incineration, Jose.
It's not incineration. Oh boy.
Go ahead, go on. Just keep it, you know.
They have a landfill similar to Ordit's landfill.
Yeah.
And they do produce gases there, and I believe they use it for power.
Yeah.
But you all along the landfill you see these exhaust pipes everywhere.
Yeah.
Which begs begs the question, and I hate that. Is there anything that's mitigating any gases coming from Ordit?
I don't know. I should know. I suspect that if you release the amount of methane generated into the atmosphere, it's so small that, you know, it's like urinating in the Mississippi, if I can give you an apt analogy there.
All right.
Yeah. But, you know, these are, I'm glad these guys are thinking about it because it makes so much sense to start thinking along these lines instead of saying, well, we got to, every 10 years, we got to go into panic overdrive and dig another cell. How much money we're spending hauling all that trash down to Inalahan. And, of course, it was a hotly contested issue when it was decided where to put that landfill. That was one choice. Up in Ordot next to the current dump was another choice. And Guatali down in Petey was a third choice. And I remember I was a senator at the time, and I said something that I hope no one ever goes back to the recordings and pulls up and uses to haunt me. Because when it came time for floor debate, you know, each of the locations had a champion or two. And when I spoke, I said, well, you know, I've heard a lot, I've read a lot, I've thought about it a lot, but I think there's no choice here but to go with Guatali. We've got to follow the science. Right.
You're Guam's regular Fauci.
Yeah. And at the time, it seemed to make so much sense. Nowadays, not so much. Yeah. So, oh yeah, and one more thing. You know, we now have a new terrain feature on Guam. I don't think anyone has taken the time to name it, but I have named it Mount Trashmore up in Ordot. There was a time when Ordot was a hole in the ground, right? And now it must be a 200-foot high mound. Now, it seems like we should be able to do something with that. Maybe ski trail? No, that wouldn't work, would it? But I wonder, you know, if the trash has value, I wonder if we couldn't start mining the trash in Ordot. If we don't have enough trash, you got a whole mountain full of trash up there. And maybe this guy, Mr. Slike, will decide he slikes us and give us a call someday and share his thoughts. All right, let's go on to the card. And, of course, we lead off the card with Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. Public Law 36-34, I won't spend any time on today because there are no violators in either of the two papers. Now, that could be for one of two reasons. One reason, boards and agencies have finally figured out how to do it. Or two, no board or agency wants to hold a meeting on a Friday because that means they can't leave early. Therefore, no meeting on Friday, no 7-day notice in Friday's newspaper. Which do you think is the more likely, Jose?
The latter.
The latter. All right. And then I've got, here's where I'm going to need a little accompaniment. I've got prosecutors. You know, usually the card is something like Sabina versus ratepayers. That's another item. Not today. It's, as you were, prosecutors are leaving. So if Facebook would let us use copyrighted music, I would have you play it in background music. Can you join me here? Leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Well, that's what prosecutors in the Attorney General's office are saying.
This just in, we got a Grammy. If only we'd stop singing.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, so first new item on the card is prosecutors are leaving. And this picks up where the anonymous complaint of the AG left off yesterday. Then I've got Sabina versus ratepayers, or how you can socialize your water department in 2 easy lessons. And then the old standby for Friday, Bavacqua versus the U.S. Constitution. And then a new chapter on what started out as Candid versus the Daily News and the Post has now been retitled David Lujan versus Marie Miller. So once again, it's Miller time. If you got the time, we got the misconduct. All right. So not much to say about Paul Zerzan here. Today I am wearing a red shirt. Note the contrast. If you're watching on Facebook, isn't the red shirt exactly the same color as the rice in that serving pan that I'm holding up to the screen right now? That's exactly the same. Exactly the same. And if you say no, you may get canceled. All right. So let's start out with leaving on a jet plane. Now, you'll recall yesterday I read a complaint from an anonymous person about the AG's office. And the end of that quote wound up like this. We can only do so much with so very little, reflecting back to the fact there are only 9 prosecutors in the office. And then going on to say all the prosecutors are suffering and everyone is trying to leave. It's going to get ugly soon if something doesn't happen. Well, something happened. Troy, of course, picks it up. Troy cheats, though. You know, Troy actually goes out and works on stories. He doesn't think that journalism consists of running press releases. He digs into things and kind of gets to the bottom of it. So we have a story, Exodus of prosecutors from AG's office. It ran in Candid today. The prosecutor who said child rapists like Luis Vargas and Danilo Morales, who sent child rapists like Luis Vargas and Danilo Morales to jail has left the office of the Attorney General, and at least 2 other prosecutors, the identities of whom yet to be provided by the office of the Attorney General, also have tendered their resignations. So let's see. 1 is gone, 2 are going. 1 plus 2 is 3. 9 minus 3 is how much, Jose?
That would be 6.
6 prosecutors. You thought 9 was bad? You ain't seen nothing yet. Attorney Christine Tenorio, arguably the OAG's strongest prosecutor and toughest on sex crimes, resigned last month. Sources tell Candid her resignation triggered an exodus from the already bare-bones legal team at the OAG. The staff, sources tell Candid, have lost their patience with Attorney General Levin T. Camacho. Wow! Camacho told Candid News that he's going to ask for a declaratory judgment on what the leaving employees said. When asked when he would do the declaratory judgment, Camacho said, as soon as I get done joining these 3 other class actions in the mainland. Yeah, that's right. So staff, sources tell Candid, have lost their patience with Attorney General Levin T. Camacho. The depletion of the OAG's prosecution team comes as cases of violent crimes the OAG must prosecute in court is on the rise. Among pending trials is that of Frank Coe San Nicolas, who was accused of raping a woman. Ms. Tenorio was the prosecutor on the case. Now, I got to remind you here, there's something called a speedy trial rule. If you look at, let's see, I think it's the 6th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Maybe it's the 5th. Yeah, the 6th Amendment. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. Constitutional. And then we also have a local statute that says the same thing. Now, oftentimes, defense counsel will waive the application of the speedy trial rule for tactical reasons, but a lot of times they'll assert it. And if you kind of paid attention to what the anonymous complainer was talking about yesterday, defense counsel called prosecutors bluffs. So, you know, they said, no, we're not going to waive speedy trial. We're ready to go to trial. And the prosecutor's thinking, God, I got 17 cases in the hopper. I can't possibly get, and I got three trials coming up at the same. I can't get all this stuff done. Mr. Defense Counsel, do you ever think about plea bargaining? That's how it works. So here we are. Candid asks OAG spokeswoman Katlina Chatfris for confirmation on the departures Wednesday. I can say that Christine is no longer with the office and that another prosecutor or two have also recently left for other opportunities. Ms. Chatfris said, I should also note we have hired at least one attorney for prosecution in the last couple of weeks. So let's see. 1 plus 2, you already told me that's 3, right? So we're losing 3. But Katlina Chatfris said, oh, it's all right. We just hired 1 in the last couple of weeks. So 3 minus 1 is, that's 2.
2.
Yeah. And then 2 from 9 is?
That would be 7.
7. It's all kind of simple arithmetic, isn't it? And, of course, I suspect that the defense bar could tell you exactly what the number is, who's leaving, when they're leaving, etc. Tenorio now DOE legal counsel. Ms. Tenorio has since been hired at the Department of Ed as legal counsel. Superintendent John Fernandez's description of the timing of her hiring seems serendipitous. DOE is faced with a lot of issues that our legal team assists us with, including any issues related to special education and procurement. Procurement? Whatever happened to the consul? Oh, that's right. Consul Uri went back to the bank. Given the influx of federal dollars, we definitely have seen the increase on the procurement side that requires more eyes and ears. Wouldn't more people do just... Oh, well. So we opened an attorney position. She applied and did well in the interview. She's been a strong addition to the team. Asked whether he was aware Ms. Tenorio was in charge of prosecuting sex crimes and that she had successfully prosecuted several high-profile cases of felons convicted of raping children, Fernandez said, quote, "I knew that she had a pretty good reputation, so we're very lucky. In the past, and based on timing of when we opened up previous positions, we haven't always had the best pool of candidates, but this time was different." So my own comment on the story, or my own evaluation, is that prosecutors are kind of a special breed. Ordinarily, once a prosecutor, always a prosecutor. Once in a while, you see one that jumps over to the defense, but they're still in the criminal law. You very seldom see a prosecutor do what Christine Tenorio did. So I have to wonder if things were so bad in the prosecution division at the Attorney General's office that Christine Tenorio took a voluntary exile to legal Siberia. It can't be very exciting dealing with procurement problems at the Department of Education compared to putting sex criminals behind bars. But what do I know? We had a phone call. Was it Leavin Camacho?
No, it wasn't. That actually was Troy, and I'll give you something right after the break, Bob.
All right. Okay, then next on the card, we've got Sabina versus ratepayers. But let's take a short break before we head for Sabina.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
$15 might not get you that far, but Chili's is bucking the trend with $15 meal deals. At Chili's, $15 gives you not one, not two, but 3-course meal deals complete with a drink, a starter, and an entree. Mix and match 3-course meals 15 ways to Sunday with soup, salad, or chips and salsa to start, and ranchero chicken tacos, honey chipotle crispers with rice, bacon ranch quesadillas, or personal fajitas for the main course. Build your own $15 meal deal at Chili's. More life and great value happen here.
Attention tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. And it's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting NissanGuam.com.
Now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Back on the air with Sabina versus ratepayers. And if you don't remember, Sabina is the top-ranked environmental wacko in the legislature right now.
How dare you?
And there's a story that ran in the Post. Measures seek to address water cost billing disputes. Now, I think everybody remembers, I don't remember the lady's name, but the 83-year-old woman that ran up a $36,000 water bill. And, you know, there was this outpouring of sentiment. Oh, the poor old lady. It's Waterworks' fault. How do you know it's Waterworks' fault? Well, because she's an old lady and she can't pay. No one should. It's their fault. Was kind of the reasoning that went behind it. As the story unwound, Waterworks said they discovered a lot of wet soil indicating a large leak in the area. Now, we had a lot of savants, like the guy over here and the lazy boy, who knows the answer to everything. Oh, you know, that much water, there should have been a lake up there, etc. So, you know, I kind of pose the question like this. Of course, we feel sorry for the little old lady. I feel sorry for her myself. If we were doing a fund drive, I might even kick into it myself. But would you feel the same way if it were the Navy, the Air Force?
Nope.
Any of the Calvo enterprises?
Deny.
No, you wouldn't. Well, you know, they're supposed to pay attention to stuff like that. And if the water went through the meter, they got to pay for it. It don't matter. Well, it mattered to Sabina, and Sabina's introduced a couple of bills. Senator Sabina Paris has introduced legislation that would assist low and fixed income families with continued access to clean drinking water and another measure to provide fairly and timely resolution to billing disputes. I smell press release here. How does the reporter here know that that the resolution would be fairly and timely? Bill 266-36 would mandate the Waterworks Authority to create a rate-funded customer assistance program to provide financial assistance and other assistance to eligible ratepayers. Now, notice I said the Waterworks Authority. I didn't say the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Yeah, mandate Waterworks to create a rate-funded customer assistance program to provide financial assistance. I thought the Waterworks Authority was to provide us with clean drinking water and to pipe the sewerage to a proper disposal plant, preferably on their own property, but not always. Financial assistance would include a discount for water and wastewater services. Now, if the eligible group pays less for the water and wastewater services, how do we make up for the shortfall? Who pays the money that they don't pay? The other ratepayers, yeah. Financial assistance would include discount for water and wastewater services, leak detection and repair services, supplemental bill assistance for hardship, and a reduction or waiver of fees, including late fees. Other assistance is to include water conservation, inspection, and assessment services, rebates or discounts for the use of water-conserving features. What is a water-conserving feature?
I'm not sure.
Maybe a refrigerator full of beer. Ray, they might drop your water bill. Maybe I shouldn't criticize. Maybe
I got 2 fridge full of beer.
All right. Let's see. The delayed discovery of and response to water leaks on private property pose avoidable economic impacts to households and unnecessary environmental impacts to our precious water resources, Paris stated in a release. GWA already plans to implement a customer assistance program, but that is tied to a rate change proposal pending before the Public Utilities Commission. Well, let's hope that the Public Utilities Commission is not governed by the thought process that is in favor of things that make tummies warm and opposed to those things that tighten anal sphincters. I don't know.
Say what?
Well, that's the test. You know, when with the old lady, yeah, man, that's just terrible. You know, I had to triple up on my dose of Metamucil when I read that thing. A little geriatric humor there, Jose.
Funny thing is, I got it.
Yeah. GWA already, as you were. The utility proposal includes a 3-tiered residential rate structure based on how much water is consumed. General Manager Miguel Berdazzu previously told the Post that customers who use less than 4,000 gallons per month on average, which is a large percentage of GWA's residential customer base, will see a reduction in bills compared to the current rate structure. For residential customers who use more than 4,000 per month, their bills will be slightly higher than their current bills under the fiscal 2021 rate structure. The planned customer assistance program would grant discounted rates for qualified low-income families. Senator Tello Taitigui co-sponsored the measure with Paris. That figures. But apparently, well, I've got the bill here. I'll see if her name is on the bill. This measure relates to billing disputes with utilities. You know, and we know that current law requires a deposit to be placed in escrow and imposes a 9% interest on disputed bills before a billing dispute can be given a hearing. This measure removes both the requirements of a deposit and the interest, making a hearing on disputed bills easier to attain, the release from Paris stated. The senator added that current law and regulations around billing disputes are outdated and pose a barrier for customers. They're outdated because these rules were all made up before the $36,000 water bill. Now we know better. For low and fixed income customers, particularly this measure, for low and income, fixed income customers particularly, this measure can help prevent an unexpected financial burden and helps assure continued access to the necessity of water, Paris said. Now, I have to interject a personal observation here. Now, I walk past the water store at Gigo Payless a lot, and I see a lot of people judging by the condition, the age and condition of their vehicles, their clothing, and other such clues. that probably can't afford bottled water. Probably lulled into thinking that you can't drink the tap water because there's something wrong. That's an everybody knows. You know, everybody knows you can't drink tap water on Guam. You can't. Everybody knows that, right, Jose?
Taki water.
Yeah. Well, I've been drinking Guam water for, it'll be 60 years next year. And I don't know if it's good for you or not, but, you know, when I arrived here, I was only about 5'2". All right, let's take a look at Bill 266, an act to add a new chapter, et cetera, the Guam Code relative to authorizing Guam Waterworks Authority to facilitate repairs on private property. Now, I see a danger signal here already. There's only one sponsor, only Sabina Flores Perez. Tello did not sign. Or maybe, well, anyhow, they probably couldn't get her permission in time, right? So there's a findings of fact and intent. And the legislature finds that delayed discovery of and response to water leaks on private property and unnecessary or inefficient use of potable water can pose economic hardship for certain low-income households and contributes to preventable waste of our precious water resources. They must have, you know, they must have an in-house genius that comes up with findings. This would never have, I would have never thought of this in a million years. And then the findings go on to say, legislature finds that assisting residents who have economic difficulty in addressing water leaks. Economic difficulties in addressing water leaks. So let me see how that works. Let's say I've got a freestanding house, and I see water bubbling up from a water pipe that goes underneath my house. And I say, well, there's a leak there. I guess I should check it. Let me check my water. Oh, no, I only got $10. I can't do it because the legislature finds that assisting residents who have economic difficulty in addressing water leaks. Some people have economic difficulty in addressing water leaks.
I think I have a solution.
Okay.
Let's just spend some of this money, because it's probably cheaper, on buying a letter opener for every customer.
That might work, yeah.
That way they be aware of their water bill.
Exactly, yeah. But the way these findings are written here, it's that you have to have a certain bank balance before you could check for water leaks. You see the water pooling in a...
What was that terminology you called? The bigotry of low expectation.
Exactly. The bigotry of low expectations. And later on, reducing water waste on private property is an important measure in water resource management, a responsibility of all residents of Guam, and one which both the legislature and the Waterworks Authority support in the interest of the ratepayers. How dare Sabina use the Waterworks? I don't see any indication here that they have the permission to put words in the Waterworks Authority's mouth, or in this case, drain. Yeah, then it goes on to say the legislature finds that enabling the Waterworks to enhance its customer assistance initiatives to facilitate leak detection, leak repair, and water conservation activities for low-income customers is essential to the public welfare. Such measures should, not must, but should, include access, with the consent of the property owner, to detect and address leaky pipes in a timely manner, conduct water conservation inspections and assessments, and assistance with the procurement and use of water-conserving features. I guess this would be a charge account at the nearest store that sells beer. Going on to the next paragraph here. Legislature intends to authorize GWA to assist residential customers through the establishment of an enhanced customer assistance program. Then I take a check on the language of the statute. That's just their legislative findings, which means since there's only one sponsor here, these are Sabina eco-fascist Paris's findings. So here's what the bill does. It works. It makes an amendment in Chapter 14 of Title 12, which is the waterworks section of the code. On or before July 1, 2022, the waterworks shall establish a rate-funded customer assistance program to provide financial and other assistance to eligible ratepayers. 2, the waterworks shall establish income eligibility standards for a residential class ratepayer to receive financial assistance under this subsection. Now, Maget Bordazzo is an engineer. I suspect he's a civil engineer. And I suppose he probably spent about a year of college on eligibility standards for financial assistance. That's just right up his alley, right?
He was waiting for this day.
Exactly. Yeah. So assigning this to a public utility, financial assistance provided under this subsections will include 1, a volumetric discount for water and wastewater services. A volumetric discount. That sounds to me like the more you use, the less you pay. All right, let's take a short break here. Getting up to the halftime show.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenacti, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Yeah, so I'm not going to trouble you with the rest of this nonsense here. Then we get down to the obligatory severability clause, right? And I'm going to use my editorial privilege here to edit the severability clause so that it more properly fits the text of the bill. If any provision of this act makes sense to any person, if any of this makes sense to any person, other than the irremediably stupid, such stupidity shall not affect other provisions or applications of this act which can be given effect without sensible provisions or applications, and to this end, the provisions of this act are severable. In other words, only the really stupid stuff can remain. You got to take out anything that makes sense, because it just wouldn't fit in this bill. Maybe that's why Tello wouldn't co-sign. No, that doesn't sound right. Okay, next. Nope. And we have 267. This is co-sponsored by Sabino Flores and Tello T. Taitigui. It means her name is not Taitigui. T is the negative. T is like not in English. Ko nyalango, are you hungry? Ahi, ti nyalango. Ko taidagui how? Ahi, ti taidagui too. All right. This one amends an act to amend certain sections of Title 12 and Title 28 of the Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations relative to establishing a fair process resolving ratepayer disputes. Hello, girls. You can't amend rules and regulations with a statute. You can enact a statute that would overcome a rule, but you can't enact rules, and the mechanism for that requires that it be developed by a government agency and sent to you where it lays before you for 90 days and then becomes enacted, or you approve it with a statute. But you can't add rule. Once you touch it, it's no longer a rule, it's a statute. So, from the get-go, this one doesn't make any sense at all. And then they just want to change some of those rules. So, it's just amazing how, the old saying, Jose, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think Sabina's got a better one than that. If I can't fix it, it ain't broke. So maybe they should have a special provision for ratepayers who are 83 years old and have a $36,000 water bill. That's obviously what she's driving at, what she's aiming at. But if this bill becomes law, it creates far more mischief than the waterworks getting stiffed on a $36,000 bill. Much, much more. Nice going, Sabina Paris. What we need is a couple of environmental wackos in our legislature.
How dare you?
No.
I got to work my iPad here for a second. It's not charging the way it should. I guess I better just shut it off. Okay, so next item on the card. Next item on the card is Bavacqua versus the United States Constitution. Once again, if we weren't blocked on music by Facebook, if we use copyrighted music on Facebook, Facebook will just dump us unceremoniously. If we could play our own bumper music and background music, every time I read Bavacqua's column, I would have Jose play My Country 'Tis a Thee in the background.
Oh, we can find that one.
Can we?
Yes, we can.
Well, let's do that, Jose. That can be Michael Bavacqua's theme song. Okay, so the title of Bavacqua's column this week is Deciding Political Status, Drafting Constitutions. And I'll jump right into it right after the big halftime show that's about to start, right, Jose?
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Convoy on the move. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The miles of Russian military vehicles that was stalled for days north of Kiev, breaking into smaller groups and taking up positions outside the Ukrainian capital.
Russia taking its first steps to move into the outskirts of Kyiv. However, as we've seen across this country, they were again repelled by the Ukrainian forces. It does suggest that Putin's forces face a long and bloody campaign if they are indeed to take over this capital, and instead they're likely to bomb indiscriminately before moving in.
The ceasefire talks in Turkey on Thursday failed to produce any agreement toward a ceasefire. The United Nations now says 2.5 million people have fled Ukraine since the invasion began. In a joint news conference Thursday with Poland's president, Vice President Kamala Harris, with an unusual answer when asked if the U.S. would allocate money to help the refugees.
A friend in need is a friend indeed.
Sparking immediate backlash from critics questioning how the vice president could laugh about a refugee crisis. The Senate has approved the $13 billion aid package for Ukraine, part of the $1.5 trillion catch-all spending bill to continue government funding through the fiscal year. A courtroom outburst from actor Jussie Smollett Thursday after he was sentenced to 150 days in jail for his hate crime hoax of 2019.
I am not suicidal.
Stop laughing about black.
I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
Smollett was ordered to pay $25,000 in fines and reimburse the city $120,000 for the police overtime in his case. The baseball lockout has ended with agreement between the owners and the players on a new 5-year collective bargaining agreement. Commissioner Rob Manfred on the MLB network.
Our players are great athletes. I respect them, and I respect the input that we received from them during.
America is listening to Fox News.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title. And in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Download podcasts.
President Biden says he will sign that big spending bill just passed by the Congress, but the White House says funding for COVID left out of it needs to be approved as well.
About $16 billion in COVID relief was stripped from a $1.5 trillion government funding bill.
We need this money. So without additional resources from Congress, the results are dire.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says over the coming weeks and months, free testing and therapy supplies could run out. Democratic leaders scrapped plans for including the emergency funding after rank-and-file members complained about offsets to pay for that spending.
I'm just not going to negotiate on this from here. Our objective is to ensure that there is additional funding so that we can continue to meet the needs of the American people.
Democratic leaders will try to advance a standalone COVID funding bill. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The Transportation Security Administration extending the face mask requirement for airliners, airports, and trains through April 18th. CDC plans to use that time to come up with a revised policy to eventually lift the requirement. President Biden trying to rally the faithful, speaking Thursday at the winter meeting of the Democrat National Committee.
We have a record to be proud of, an agenda that addresses the biggest concerns are here in American people's lives, the message that resonates. And now what we have to do is we have to sell it with confidence, clarity, conviction, and repetition.
The president said the DNC's key for the midterms is party unity. The president will reportedly announce Friday that along with the European Union and the Group of 7 nations, the United States will move to revoke most favored nation trade status for Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. That would allow the U.S. and its allies to impose tariffs on Russian imports. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Subway keeps the Eat Fresh Refresh subs rolling in with the fresh take on timeless classics. Try the honey mustard rotisserie style chicken. It's the new Subway rotisserie style chicken with a flavor upgrade, mizzled with honey mustard on hearty multigrain bread and topped with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Craving some heat? The Baja Turkey Avocado hits all the hot notes. Oven roasted turkey stacked high on hearty multigrain smeared with smashed avocado and drizzled with the piquant chipotle sauce. Tuck into new subs to savor at Subway. Eat fresh.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Great halftime show here on Tall Tales. This leads us into the second half of the last show this week. Much as we regret it, we won't be here tomorrow. We won't be here Sunday, but we will be here on Monday. During the break, I cruised through some of the posts on Facebook, and I noticed a couple mentioned Jussie Smollett. And I suspect folks out there are saying, God, when Bob read the card, I didn't hear anything about Jussie Smollett on the card. Well, you guys probably out there, you tailgaters, think that being the host of Tall Tales is really easy. All you have to do is sit in front of the microphone and the camera, comment on current events, and tell a lot of stale grandpa jokes. Nothing to it.
Easy peasy.
But there's a lot more to it than that, you know, timing, pacing, which fits where, which one are we going to do today? Do we have time for that, et cetera? The great big halftime show. So timing is really important, and it's a little too early to talk about Jussie Smollett because Robert Underwood's column doesn't come out until tomorrow. And, you know, I suspect that Robert will write about Jussie Smollett and the bad and the bum rap that they gave him in Chicago. So racist, you know. You know, he's a person of color. And Robert will tell you that everything we do depends on color. And I don't think the judge was a person of color. So the judge was not a person of color. And he's sending Smollett to jail, fining him $25,000 and making him pay $120,000 in restitution. What does that tell you? Uh-huh.
Well, at least his attackers were persons of color.
I beg your pardon?
At least his attackers were persons of color.
Well, we really don't know what happened, you know, because who was running the court system there?
Wait, that's true.
Yeah, we really don't know what happened. So I suspect Robert, I'm hoping Robert will be true to form here as one who has been teaching critical race theory since 1972. He'll shed a lot of light on this, and that's why I thought it was not quite, this story is not quite ripe. Maybe Monday. Okay, so let's talk about Michael Bavacqua. And Michael Bavacqua is dead set against the drafting of a local constitution. And he always comes up with the same reason, that if we drafted a local constitution, it would have to conform to the United States Constitution. And the United States would still have control over Guam. So I'm just going to go through his article, his column one more time. And probably ought to start out with this at the very beginning. Article 6 of the Constitution, the second paragraph of Article 6. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made pursuant thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So, if we enacted our own Constitution, it would have to conform to the United States Constitution, which has a supremacy clause in it. Now, keep that in mind as we go through Bavacqua's comments here. And once again, I will remind you of what this is really all about. It's not about Chamorro self-determination. It's about independence and nothing else. Let's see, I got Frenchie. Yeah, Frenchie wants to talk about the Second Amendment. Frenchie, I'm going to go through Bavacqua's column here, and then we'll get to the Second Amendment. So here's how Bavacqua's column starts. For more than 4 decades in Guam, the focus for political status change has been around selecting a political status direction first and then writing a constitution later. In the 1979 vote, whereby the draft constitution was defeated, this was articulated as not putting the cart before the carabao. This means that Guam should decide whether it wants to be a state. Now, get this. This means that Guam should decide. Now, what is that commission on decolonization? What's it really called?
Chamorro decolonization.
Yeah. Chamorro self-determination is what it's all about. But, we go back and forth. Chamorro self-determination, political status of Guam. Another way of kind of gaslighting you into thinking that the two are synonymous. That Chamorro self-determination and the ultimate political status, it's just the same thing. And then he goes on to say, this means that Guam should decide first whether it wants to be a state within the U.S., freely associated with the U.S., or an independent country first, and then write a constitution second. Well, I've explained innumerable times why free association is a political will-o'-the-wisp. You got to be independent to enter into a treaty of free association with the United States. Statehood, practically impossible, but if that's what we really wanted, we meaning the people of Guam, not Bavacqua and his cronies, we have to draft a constitution first. The process for admission of new states is that territories, all the continental territories, drafted a constitution which they submitted to the Congress along with a draft with a bill for an enabling act. And if the Congress liked the Constitution, and pass the Enabling Act, fine. If they didn't like the Constitution, if your state constitution said polygamy is going to be permitted in our state, you're not going to be admitted to the Union. After the Civil War, state constitutions that took the wrong track on slavery, would not be readmitted into the Union. So if you understand what you're talking about, if statehood is the game, then you have to draft a constitution. And if you're really interested in that, then you should take great pains to draft a constitution that would pass muster if Guam became a state. Maybe have some effective dates. Enact the Constitution that would work with the territory, and enact other sections that would be effective when Guam became a state. Now, one thing he is right about: if you're going to be an independent country, then you got to draft your constitution. But again, if you're really serious about this, you would campaign for independence by telling the people how they would be better off independent than they are now. And you would do that by saying, if we were independent, this could be our Constitution. But it can't right now because we are a territory of the United States. So, but that's not Bavacqua's bent here. What he does is criticize the situation we're in now, holds out independence as a political utopia without telling us what would be involved, and in the process tries to gaslight us through some cleverly worded phrases and paragraphs to think, well, yeah, we would be better off with independence. I call it gaslighting. So he's drawn a lot of inspiration from the Virgin Islands, and that's what the next part of his column discusses, the Virgin Islands. Some might argue that since tackling the political status question is so difficult or has taken so long without any resolution, we should go to the Constitution first and then pick our status later. I suppose some would argue that. That's not the main argument. The main argument is like this: regardless of where you want to go, if your tires are wearing out, let me do a modern one. Regardless of where you want to go and your battery is dying, even though you want to buy an electric car, it makes sense to buy a new battery now and not get stuck on the side of the road. The only problem with that argument, now he says we should go to the Constitution route first, then pick our status later. The only problem with that argument, now there's only one problem with that argument, folks, not several. Next column, there can't be another argument. The only problem with that argument is that the Virgin Islands have been attempting to do that for more than 4 decades, and have to date held 5 constitutional conventions and drafted multiple constitutions. They have made no more progress than Guam has. To understand more about the potential issues that arise when attempting to write a constitution prior to determining a political status direction, let's take a look at the 4th attempt the USVI took to writing a constitution in 1981. Media reports from that time show that those who voted against the Constitution, which was a majority, did so because the draft didn't address the things they were concerned about for the VI's future. Now, a very misleading statement. Media reports show that those who voted against the Constitution did so because the draft didn't address the things they were concerned in. So did they vote? Did their vote show what they didn't like?
Yeah, was it a poll?
Yeah.
Was it a fill in the blank?
Was it a kind of search and replace through the newspaper till you find a quote that you liked?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. For example, speaking to the New York Times Adalbert Bryan. Now, with a first name like Adalbert, how much credibility are you going to give the guy? Adalbert. Adalbert Bryan, a police captain from St. Croix, said he voted against the draft constitution because it didn't help the island on issues like immigration and customs. He noted that a U.S. citizen doesn't have to clear customs coming here, and guns are coming in. And the easiest way to bring them in is through an American port. Now let's just stop and analyze that. Now let's take Adalbert at his word. He wants to draft a constitution that says the Virgin Islands should control customs and immigration. Could a state control customs? How much control does California have over customs and immigration?
From state to state?
From foreign?
From foreign? Oh.
Zero.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, how about from state to state? Zero. Yeah. So that's, if that's what you want, you have ruled out everything but independence. Or, surprisingly, the unincorporated status that you have right now. Because in the covenant that the negotiators negotiated with the U.S. government that created the Northern Marianas, the Northern Marianas did have control of customs and immigration and labor laws until they screwed it up so bad that the Congress took it away from them. So you could have that as an unincorporated territory. You can't have it as an incorporated territory. You can't have it as a state. You could have it as an independent country. So, you put this quote in here, and people are saying, yeah, we should be able to control who comes to our island. We don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry. We don't want every oscillating Richard who can buy a plane ticket to come here.
We don't want to be like Texas southern border.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we know the United States doesn't control immigration. We'd at least control it. Yeah. So, and then the same with customs. So, this paragraph. Then, well, yeah, I like that. Yeah, we should be able to do that. And you keep building on this and building on it till finally you find out that the way to get the things you want or the things you think you want can only be achieved through independence. The column goes on to say the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands legislature at the time, Senator Ruby Rouse, was also an opponent of the draft constitution and echoed those concerns. Customs. Yeah, and of course the fact that she was part of the political establishment wouldn't have had anything at all to do with her being in opposition to the draft constitution. Also speaking to the Ruby Rouse, in the next sentence, also speaking to the New York Times, he highlighted, what year was this?
1981.
He named Ruby Rouse? That couldn't have been 2021. Yeah, I wouldn't have batted an eye, because I always think of Ruby as a female name. I had an Aunt Ruby one time.
Well, they also have an Adalbert.
Yeah, yeah. We want people to comment on the draft constitution here. We'll screen you for your names. We only want unusual names. Ruby Rouse, speaking to the New York Times, highlighted that control of borders and the ability to have a say over who or what comes into their island was essential. Independence is the only way you could do it. He was against the Constitution because whether we control customs and immigration matters. These are the things we need straightened out first. Yeah, well, you shouldn't vote for the Constitution. You should be out there joining the independence movement. For the majority of U.S. VI voters in 1981, control of their borders, including the ability to insulate themselves from the U.S. or protect their islands, was a key concern. This is music to Bavacqua's ears. And he would tell you that the people of Guam, in this situation, the people of Guam wanted the same thing. Now, in this case, people of Guam means Chamorros, but we don't always use that. We use people of Guam, our people, Guam, and the people, when what we really mean is Chamorros. The problem is that as a territory, their constitution was required to acknowledge U.S. control over the islands and conform to U.S. laws. Of course. This is because as a territory, your Constitution isn't about you, but rather accepting that the U.S. controls your destiny and acknowledging that in a formal document. So this sounds like
twist of words.
This is the anti-statehood platform of this has nothing to do with anything but anti-statehood. Our Constitution is a fundamental document meant to represent the will or the worries of a people.
I thought it was for Guam.
Of a people.
Oh.
No, what do you think he means by a people?
Only one.
Yeah, he doesn't mean the people.
Nope.
A people and the people are not the same thing. This means that figuring out first what you want your relationship to the U.S. to be is essential, since it will determine what you can or cannot have in your Constitution. If the people of U.S. VI would like to become full members of the American Union as a state, then controlling their own immigration or customs isn't an option.
Duh.
I'm amazed. You know, this guy was teaching, he should have been teaching political science at the university. He's a classic political science professor. He understands this stuff so well. Think of what he could have brought to a political science class. I got to read that again. If the people of the Virgin Islands would like to become full members of the American Union as a state, then controlling their own immigration or customs isn't an option. Wow. But should that be a fundamental concern that they have, then pursuing free association or independence might be necessary. Independence of free association is off the table. So finally we get to it at the very end here. Yeah, and that's what it's all about. That's all Bavacqua is about, and that's all Melvin Wanpat is about, and that's all Hope Cristobal is about, and that whole lash up down there at the so-called Decolonization Commission. We want an independent Guam.
So, you know what? The problem I have with this article or this op-ed, especially his examples, is that they weren't examples of people who are against a constitution. They're examples of people who had problems with a part of the Constitution they were drafting.
Uh-huh.
The beginning of this says that we shouldn't have a Constitution at all, but that's not what these people were saying. They just had a problem with one part of it.
Yeah, and either a fundamental misunderstanding or they're playing Bavacqua.
Then again, this is from 1981, so, you know, it's a little bit of rewritten history to context.
That's true. That's very true. But again, the bottom line here is that Bavacqua and that whole Chamorro self-determination lash-up, it's one thing. It's independence. And Chamorro self-determination is really a camouflage way of saying independence. So don't be sucked in by it. If you want independence, come right out and say, I want Guam to be independent. Be upfront about it. And if you have something to sell, be a salesman. Don't try to trick people into thinking it's what is best for the island when I think it's not. Okay, so let's take a short break and we'll come back. We'll go from Wrigley Field in Chicago straight to Gay Paris.
Get a box of Post or Kellogg's cereal for only 99 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Get a 75-ounce bottle of Dawn dish soap for only $5.95 when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Get a Bounty paper towel 2-pack for only 99 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Attention, tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. It's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting NissanGuam.com.
Okay, so here we are at Wrigley Field, Chicago, and we have resurrected the SST, the supersonic transport, so we can get from Wrigley Field to Paris in just a matter of minutes to entertain our good friend Frenchie, who wants to talk about the Second Amendment, leaving Camacho in the dust in Ukraine. Let's start out with leaving Camacho in the dust, okay, Frenchie?
Okay. Well, you're putting me on a different order. That's fine. Yeah, it's right now. It's not too much gay Paris as it is gray Paris because of the socialist mayor that's screwing up everything in the city. We'll see if somebody will be able to clean it up before the next Olympics. So yeah, Lewin Camacho, it's. He's becoming more and more like what we've seen in larger scale in LA, San Francisco, Chicago, or even St. Louis, which is smaller but still a sizable city, where you have people that have been put in office thanks to outside money, which, by the way, leads me to a big question for people that want to investigate this thing. On his last election campaign 4 years ago, he seemed to have a pretty good amount of money, and I don't know where it came from, but he seemed to have a very well financed campaign. So it could be interesting to go back and look into that. But, basically what they're doing is that they are deconstructing the departments they're in, and then they decide unilaterally, either by political fiat or by lack of funding and attrition, which is exactly what we see with the criminal division, which is having less and less lawyers to do more and more work. Basically, we end up either refusing or not prosecuting certain crimes. And we are creating an environment which I am very familiar with, because this is what they've done in Europe for the last 45 years, where criminals are not serving their terms in prison, where there is a revolving door from being caught by the cops to getting out of the court. And we've seen that in New York, we've seen it in Chicago, we even see it in Minneapolis and everywhere. And I think Lewin Camacho is right in that type of philosophy, and I was wondering if maybe perhaps somebody can find who was financing his campaign, because it looks very much the same kind of people that have been financing those campaigns on the mainland. So that was one of my observations there, if you wish.
Very interesting.
Yeah. On the Second Amendment, I wanted to kind of raise an alarm a little bit, because while we are all focused by the hysterics of the Ukraine campaign, we are not watching what our politicians are doing. They're pointing at the moon, people are watching the finger, and they are not seeing what they are doing with the other hand, which is Biden is getting ready to sign the UN treaty on control of small arms, which is something that Obama didn't dare to do. But it looks like Biden is ready to do it, which is nothing else but a gun-grabbing and rights eradication by the UN. And it has worked very well in Europe and in Canada and in Australia, and it looks like they want to bring it here in the United States. So I think just watch out for what's going on. The ATF, it was also revealed, has more than 1 billion files on gun transactions that are supposed to have been destroyed. But what they have been doing is seizing the files of gun shops that are going out of business. And we have seen a lot of shops have gone out of business during the pandemic. And they have millions and millions of files on gun transactions, which means that basically they have the equivalent of a registration backdoor. So they know what people have, and we all know that registration is the first step before confiscation. And so I would say to all the people that love the Second Amendment, beware and be very worried, because those people mean business. And we have seen how the Democratic Party has been co-opted by people from the far left who pretend that they have been they've changed their mind, they're more reasonable, so they are now Democrats, but they actually Trotskyists, communists, and so on, and they are doing a work of termite within the Democratic Party, and now we see the result of their work more and more. And, we end up with some of the loonies that we have in Washington, D.C., but they are everywhere. They are in your school boards and everything. And we have a couple here on Guam in the Senate, like the one that introduced all those things for the water department. So beware about those things. Be very careful about when you see something like this, kind of cross-reference what's going on. And this is what those people are trying to do around the Constitution in order to force us to give our guns out. So this is another thing. So I wanted to catch up very fast through on the military situation in Ukraine.
I'll tell you what, Franchi, we'll talk about that on our way to Churchill Downs. How does that sound?
Okay.
Go ahead.
That's fine. I'll hold on.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you sure?
Yeah, while we're on our way to Churchill Downs, we'll listen to what you got to say.
So, there is a very heavy fog of hysteria and fake news and everything. So, but what we can see, what's going on is that, you have a lot of so-called TV specialists that are explaining us the strategy that is not working for the Russians, but they are not taking in consideration the history of the Russian military, which goes back to way far back to the 16th, 17th century. And basically their tactics are very similar to what they were then, and they are still now, even though they have modernized it. And which is to create a cauldron, to retreat, attract people to come and make a mistake, and then surround them, leave them a little room to escape, let the civilians get out if you can, and then give them the choice to surrender or be annihilated, which is exactly what they did during World War II. This is what they did to Napoleon in 1813. People do not have a strong understanding of how radical the Russians can be when they start to fight. You know, don't forget it's a country that was not afraid to burn their own capital city so that the French couldn't have it. They are the ones that fought a horrendous battle in Stalingrad with the Germans that was of an unseen brutality that has never been equal to this day. So we have people that can be very radical in the fighting, but they're also very well organized in what they do. What they're applying in Ukraine now is what they did in Chechnya. It's what they did in Syria against the Islamic State. And they have been doing it. So in the Donbass region, which is populated by Ukrainian, Russian-speaking population who have declared their own autonomy in the Donbass, they have taken the offensive against the bulk of the Ukrainian army, which is on the Eastern Front. And basically, they have stabilized that front. And, you know, we have to understand that that war has been going on for 8 years, where the Ukrainians have been bombarding their own citizens for 8 years at a cost of about 13,000 plus civilian casualties. And there is two cauldrons that have developed. One is in the Donbass region, where most of the elite troops of the Ukrainians are now surrounded between the Russian troops that come from the north and the militias of the Donbass region that are coming from the east. And so they are being surrounded now. And then the other cauldron is Mariupol. Now, Mariupol is a very important city because it's on the Azov Sea. And for people that do not understand geography, the Azov Sea is kind of a little arm of the Black Sea, which is northeast of the Black Sea, and it goes in a little Detroit that is next to the Crimea Peninsula. So Mariupol is very important because it's one of the only military naval base for the Ukrainian, and it's also a center for metallurgy, for steel industry, right? So there is another cauldron there, and they have tried to let the civilians get out. Now, there is a lot of propaganda on both sides, accusation of shooting civilians and so on. The Turkish and the Greeks, who are traditional enemies for once, were giving the same reports that the Ukrainians were shelling their own civilians that were trying to live in the corridors to exit Mariupol and get out of the city. So it's very interesting when you see two different opposite sides say the same thing. And this is where we are right now. And then rather than trying to take Kiev, they are neutralizing Kiev and waiting for the battle in the east to be over, because when this is over, the best troops of the Ukrainian army have been neutralized, either by surrendering or by being eradicated. So it will be very important to see in the next week and a half to 2 weeks. But this is what has been going on the military front. And it brings the fact that the European Union, the U.S., sanctions have not stopped anything. On the contrary, I think he had just put oil on the fire. And we are going to have a lot of issues, especially in Europe, because the U.S. is not as exposed but Europe is very exposed to oil and gas embargo, which Putin is talking to close Nord Stream 1, which would be a catastrophe at the end of the winter for especially Germany. And so this is where we are right now. There is a lot of issues to look at, like the SWIFT and the Russian Central Bank sanctions, which is a developing story. But one of the things that all this revealed is that there is a deep divide in Washington, D.C. between the State Department, which is controlled by the Hillary Clinton mafia, especially Sullivan and Nuland, who are both very anti-Russian, and their allies in the NSA and the CIA, and the Pentagon, who apparently put their foot down and saying, no, we don't want to escalate because it's extremely dangerous. We're talking about a country with several tens of thousands of nuclear bombs, and this is very dangerous. But that also revealed that there was a rift inside the Pentagon between some of the woke crowd at the Pentagon, from General Milley, Lloyd Austin, who is the Secretary of Defense, Michael Gilday, who is the Chief of Naval Operation, and what was his name, the guy from the Space Force, General Raymond, who is a transfer from the Air Force to the Space Force. All those people have been, instead of getting ready for a conflict, they've been getting ready to fight white privilege. And so those people apparently are being opposed by a small but much more patriotic number of military generals and colonels that are kind of fed up with what's going on. So this crisis has shown that we don't understand what the Russians are doing. B, the Biden administration was trying to use this crisis to blame Putin for the upcoming economic disaster, and maybe capitalize on the election year in November, and also push and we've seen it in many newspapers articles, push for their green agenda by saying, see, we told you we need renewable resources rather than oil and gas. So we're already seeing those things happening. And then C is the big issue of the fight between the State Department and the Pentagon, which has gone crescendo. I mean, it's not unusual for people from the State Department to be opposed by the military on certain issues, but this is coming at a time where the president is a very weak person. So it is very something that we should really watch very carefully, because the potential for this to get out, like I cannot use the word on the radio, but for things to go from worse to worse is there, because we have some very radical people that are being opposed by less radical people, but there are still think that we're fighting the USSR rather than Russia. So all those things, if you have time to catch up this weekend on reading, there are a lot of good things out there that you can catch. And this is definitely something you should be worried about if your children are serving in the military at this time.
Frenchie, it's time we've arrived at Churchill Downs, but after we watch the horses in the paddock, I'm going to bring you back on, and I'm going to give you an assignment.
Okay.
Are you ready? Here's your assignment. If you were in charge of American foreign policy and defense right now, what would you do? That will bring you on right after we leave Churchill Downs, and you can explain.
Okay.
All right?
Okay. Yeah.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So here we are, excuse me, at Churchill Downs. We're at the home stretch at Tall Tales for another week. Much as we dread it, we got to be out of here on Saturday and Sunday. And we've got one of the distinguished tailgaters, who's one of our regular callers that tailgaters really appreciate because of the wealth of knowledge that he brings to the show, even surpassing that of the host. Wow, we never thought we'd see that day, did we? So Frenchie has told us a lot about what's going on in Ukraine, who's doing what to whom and why they're doing it, and what shouldn't happen. And he has most graciously accepted my request that he come on and tell us how he would handle the situation if he were running American defense policy and American foreign policy. So with no further ado, here's Frenchie.
Well, thank you, Bob. I have to watch my ankles so they don't swell too much after such an introduction. Well, I think the most important thing to do immediately is to try to de-escalate. And in order to de-escalate, we have to put the pressure on our allies in NATO and the ones around NATO, like Sweden, Finland, and other actors like this, who have historical worries because they have fought several wars with Russia, to tell them to quiet down and to take a breath of fresh air, because right now we keep on pouring gasoline on the fire, and we know that just is not helping at all. So we need to de-escalate. It's very important. That doesn't mean capitulate. That means de-escalate. And we need to engage the Russians and impose to the Ukrainians, because we have to face it. We are controlling Ukraine. Like it or not, this is a fact. We are controlling the Ukraine government. So we would tell the Ukrainians, you go back to the negotiating table, and then if you guys are good on both sides, we will come and join you to facilitate the peace talk. Because one of the things that triggered Putin was that Biden said, I'm done talking, I'm pulling out. So when he did that, the only thing that Putin could do, especially in view of the escalation of the fighting on the Eastern Front, was to bring his own troops in the music, because nobody was listening to what he was saying. So de-escalate, engage into a ceasefire, and renegotiate again a new peace plan that could be a lasting one and not the fake one that we've been having since 1991. We need to recognize, like Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski, who were the two pillars, left and right, of our foreign policy for decades, and which they understood very well, that Russia needs to have a buffer zone between themselves and NATO. And it doesn't matter what the radicals in D.C. are saying. That's the only thing that's going to make him come to the table. And we, in order to do that, we have to take away the excuses that Putin has used to invade Ukraine, and which is basically to re-engage him in negotiation. And basically the goal is to stabilize Ukraine, to come up with an autonomous region where the Russian minority will not be in danger of eradication, because let's not forget, since 2014, there was ethnic cleansing from the Ukrainian against the Russian in the east. So we have to take away that excuse from Putin and give them an opportunity to settle down, probably get rid of our most radical. We also have used very radical people to keep the pressure on Putin, and we have to get rid of those people, or maybe let Putin get rid of them for us, just like the kings used to do when they had too many mercenaries in the Middle Ages. They would start a new war, have them all killed, and then the problem was done. It's a little cold-blooded, but this is where we have to go. And then stop and re-engage him also on the economical side, because we all forget, but in the 1990s, Putin came to the West and came to the United States and say, we want to be partners, economical partners. We want to do that. And guess who was one of the most radical person against him? It was a senator from Delaware named Biden, right? So
it all comes back to let's go, Brandon and Frenchie.
It always comes back to the thing, except nowadays.
It's just about time for me to utter that cry on the air. Let's go, Brandon.
Yeah.
So I know you've got a little bit more to tell us, but
no, but that's okay.
I'm going to have to wrap up the show.
I think I gave you the main things to do. Right now, I don't see any of the actors, except for the Turks and the Israelis, for their own personal reasons, that are pushing for some kind of agreement of that sort.
Yeah.
But unless the Ukrainians are forced to the table, they will go to the negotiation to gain time and rearm and keep on doing. And the people that are paying the price for it is the Ukrainian people, because they are the one being bombed from both sides, you know.
I got it, Frenchie. I gotta take a minute here to wrap up the show, but I really appreciate your analysis. We look forward to talking to you on Monday, okay?
Very well. Let's go, Brandon.
Thank you very much, Frenchie. Okay, so it is time to wrap up the show, and I've got a couple late breaking here from Troy. There's another, as I mentioned in the card, there's another chapter in David Lujan versus Marie Miller, which I will pick up on Monday, and perhaps another edition, because we see the district court thinks this is as important as we do, because they even meet on Sundays to deal with this. So I've got that coming up. And then a real late breaking on leaving on a jet plane that I just got during the show and haven't had a chance to really fit it into the framework of the show. But it's again, from the best news source on the island, and the title is Prosecutors Revolt. AG's actions may force better plea deals for criminals. And I did find one really interesting sentence in this story that ran on Candid. The subtitle is Digging Up Dirt on Prosecutors. And listen to this. One source said that after he filed a grievance against Camacho, the Attorney General, one of his co-workers approached him to warn, hey, watch your back. They made a copy of your hard drive. So see you on Monday. We'll pick up all this stuff and run with it on Monday. In the meantime, don't forget, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
New Russian airstrikes. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Reported in the southeast Ukrainian city of Dnipro and in 2 cities in far western Ukraine. This is Russian troops staged north of Kiev have begun to move.
Those forces in that convoy north of Kiev appear to be on the move now, according to U.S. officials, moving into some of the woods areas, getting artillery guns ready in firing positions. All of it could portend a coming assault on the capital in the next few days.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt in Lviv.
They need this assistance, and they need it right now.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell ahead of Thursday's vote on a nearly $14 billion aid package for Ukraine contained in the $1.5 trillion omnibus spending bill. 18 Republicans joined all of the Democrats in passing that bill, which President Biden says he will sign. The president welcomed Colombia's President Ivan Duque Marquez to the White House Thursday to discuss a new migration agreement for Central America.
Our goal is going to be to sign a regional declaration on migration and protection in June in Los Angeles when the United States hosts the Summit of the Americas.
President Duque Marquez joined in condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine, calling what's happened there an atrocity. Jussie Smollett has been sentenced to 150 days in prison in order to pay $25,000 fine and more than $120,000 in restitution to the city of Chicago for his 2019 hate crime hoax. After 99 days, the lockout in Major League Baseball has come to an end with a new 5-year deal with the Players Union. Team representatives overruling the union's executive committee to accept the owner's most recent contract offer. Players can report to spring training effective immediately. They must be there by Sunday. The regular season will now open on April the 7th. America is listening to Fox News.